16, I didn't know how to stand up for myself. I was taught to fear adults because they knew what was best for me, to be quiet and compliant, to defer to authority figures, including teachers, religious leaders, family members, and when I was old enough, my boss. Chuck E. Cheese had a firmly established career path that started with stamping children's hands as they charged through the arcade doors and ended with hosting birthday parties. On my very first day, I proved to be a competent bouncer, and within a week, I'd worked my way up to ball pit supervisor. I stood tall with my arms crossed in front of my chest and blew my whistle at regular intervals to earn the approval of my manager, Monica, who was a thrice divorced middle-aged chain smoker with Dijon mustard-colored teeth. I was terrible at this job because I didn't like kids. But I did what I had to do to climb the ladder because the rule in my house was that if we wanted to drive, we had to have a job. And all I could think about was driving my friends to and from Del Taco in the movie theater in my '93 maroon Toyota Celica. Within a month at Chuck E. Cheese, I'd worked my way up to hosting birthday parties by diving into a sea of boogers and goldfish crackers to save a frantic woman's wedding ring from being swallowed by the ball pit. The birthday job was coveted because if you were good, you'd get a generous tip at the end, almost double what you'd make in an entire weekend. And I was good. After hosting my first birthday party, the dad handed me a $100 bill. I'd never even seen one of those before. I immediately began calculating how many CDs I could buy at Tower Records. Giddy, I stuffed the $100 into my pleated khaki shorts pockets and headed toward the break room for my free slice of pizza and soda. But before I got there, I heard Monica's throaty voice chasing after me. "Excuse me, Miss Stiff, would you like to get written up?" Bewildered, I stood staring at her. "It's against Chuck E. Cheese policy for you to accept tips." "Oh, I didn't know," I said. "I'm so sorry. I'll go give it back." No. This is a manager's responsibility. Give me the money, and I'll go give it back to that poor gentleman. I begrudgingly handed over the money and watched her from behind a pinball machine in the corner as she walked up to the man. I saw her shake his hand and smile. I watched her walk away and stuff the money into her pocket. My powerlessness gave way to apathy over those next 3 long months of employment at Chuck E. Cheese, and I was eventually fired for calling in sick to perform in a dance show in a church parking lot. Believing that I was only qualified for ball pits and birthday parties, I got a job at Discovery Zone, a Chuck E. Cheese without the mice. I knew that I had found my calling at Discovery Zone for 2 reasons. 1, my assistant manager, Todd, didn't steal my birthday party tips. And 2, they had Mr. Pibb on tap instead of Dr. Pepper. About 3 weeks into my dream job, I was on the closing shift late one Friday night with Todd, a 300-pound man with a Tweety Bird tattoo on his left calf and a pockmarked face and man ponytail. I was dutifully washing the pizza pans in the 3-step sanitation system when Todd walked into the kitchen and cheerfully suggested that I help him clean the balls. I felt obliged to comply because I was so afraid to get fired after my termination from Chuck E. Cheese, and I wanted to prove that I was a dedicated employee. Todd instructed me to crawl through the ball pit on hands and knees and toss out any deflated or egregiously soiled balls. When he hopped right in there with me, my first thought was, what a great leader. He's really in the weeds with me. But then he stood up and started walking closer to me. "Let's make out right here in the pit," he said breathlessly. I can't. I have a boyfriend. I was too naive and too shocked to feel terrified. And having been a wallflower so far in my teen years, I was secretly flattered that a grown man wanted to kiss me. "Are you kidding?" he asked me. "You know I have a Corvette, right?" I pictured his golden mane blowing in the wind and his used metallic gold Corvette with Meatloaf playing on a cassette player. "No, I can't. I just don't want things to get complicated," I told him. Something I'd heard women say in movies when they needed an excuse to get out of kissing a man. At first, I naively thought Todd's pursuit of me was harmless flirtation, but it quickly ballooned into full-blown sexual harassment. I told nobody that this had happened, afraid that I'd done something wrong, and I'd get fired or my mom would force me to quit. This was 1993. There was no training for this, no policy or procedure to protect me, no sit down and watch this video when you got hired. I was woefully unprepared for how to handle such a complex issue. Todd began to arrange our schedule so we'd always close together, alone. But I pushed down my simmering unease and pretended everything was okay. Until one night, when I was in the kitchen scrubbing down the sinks with bleach, when Todd barged through the swinging doors. He untucked his pit-stained white polo shirt from his cargo shorts, tucked a greasy yellow lock of hair behind his ear, and announced, "I just want to make love to you right here, on the sink." He shoved the dishes off the sink, giant metallic disc pizza pans crashing down onto the floor in a cacophonous rage. And for the first time, my body seized with panic. And yet, I was so afraid to offend him or get in trouble that I actually contemplated giving in. The only thing I could think to say to safely extricate myself from the situation was that I really want to, but I want my first time to be special, like, on a beach, under the stars. Pacified, he said, "Okay, next Friday. We'll bail early and go to Newport Beach." I drove home shaking, ran up the stairs to my bathroom and vomited. I told my mom I had some rotten birthday cake, but she knew better. She sat on the floor outside of the locked bathroom door on the mauve-colored shag carpet and pleaded with me to talk to her until I gave in. Sort of. All I said was that Todd was bugging me. The further she probed, the more I fortified my walls, realizing that I was making her worry and wondering, am I being too friendly to Todd? Is this my fault? My mom began to drive me to and from work, and she'd show up an hour before my shift ended and come inside and wait, saying she was out grocery shopping and didn't want to go home and come back for me. And she made me tell Sandy, the real manager, that Todd was bothering me. Todd began retaliating by not giving me any hours and relegating me to the ball pits. And then one day, Todd was just gone. And I could finally breathe again. I felt safe with my new assistant manager, Javier, an oversized teddy bear kind of guy who ambled around with a toothpick in his mouth, which was permanently affixed into a cherub grin. He was the manager everybody went to when they couldn't get what they wanted from the head manager. Kind of like when mom says no and you go ask dad without telling him mom says no, but he knows damn well what's going on and gives in regardless. Javier took his time to get to know me and to establish trust between us. He bided his time. But that familiar nausea began to creep in when he would pop in on my birthday parties and plant himself in a tiny kid's chair in the corner, watching me sing and blow out candles and open presents with the children. I went through the motions of the birthday parties, smiling and clapping and making the Melissas and Bradleys and Heathers feel like this was the most important day of their lives, all the while choking on the acrid taste of bile in my mouth. Javier claimed he was observing me for quality control, but I didn't see him perched in the corner of any other birthday party rooms. I again found myself alone with an older giant man every weekend night on the closing shift. When Javier began leaving roses on my car and asking me out on dates, I was paralyzed with fear and shame and confusion. I didn't know how to say no without offending him or having my birthday party duties stripped away from me. When I told my mom, she picked up the phone to call the police. and then slammed it down. She had a better idea. You know what this means, honey? We're suing them. My mom had been watching the Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill trials on TV, and she was ready to go to battle with Discovery Zone. Mom, no, I want to drive. I didn't understand how much danger I was in, or that I didn't have to tolerate being harassed at work. I appeased her by promising to report Javier's behavior to Sandy. And when I fulfilled that promise, Sandy curtly told me to stop flirting with the male employees. She assured me that she would have a talk with Javier. The following week, Javier was gone. I went off to college soon after, aching for my innocence and longing for my freedom, feeling stuck between childhood and adulthood, just beginning to see the real world taking shape in front of me. The first summer I returned home from college, I got a part-time job at Discovery Zone under new and more appropriate management. On my first day back, when I offered to help clean the ball pit, my new manager looked at me, bemused, and said, "We don't clean the balls. We throw them out every 6 months and replace them." Thank you. That was Jen Smith.